Friday evening. West side of Detroit. A family gathers to bury a young man taken too soon in a car crash. Grief fills the room, hymns are sung. And then, in an instant, grief turns into terror. Gunfire outside a house of worship. In the middle of a funeral, by the time it was over, 5 people had been shot. And a city was left asking the same question it's asked too many times before. How do we stop hurting each other long enough to heal? What happened next, both outside that church and later, inside a pulpit not far away, is a story about violence. But it's also a story about what comes after violence. Stay with me till the end, because the second half of this changes how you look at the first. It happened at 5:48 in the evening, just before 6, outside Greater Love Tabernacle Church on Plymouth Road, near the intersection with Longacre Street on Detroit's west side. A funeral service had just been held for a young man who died in a car accident. Mourners were outside the church when, according to police, an argument broke out. That argument escalated fast. One person pulled a handgun and fired directly into the crowd. Here's the part that likely prevented a far worse tragedy. Detroit police officers were already on the scene, not because they expected trouble at the funeral itself, but because they'd been stationed across the street at the Pi 3 funeral home, where a separate visitation was underway. Police had received prior threats of violence connected to that event, so officers from the 6th Precinct were assigned there as a precaution. When the shooting broke out at the church, an officer saw it happen in real time and returned fire, striking the suspect. Detroit Police Chief Todd Bettison laid out the details at a press briefing afterward. He described a suspect who pulled a weapon during the altercation and began firing into the crowd, and an officer who recognized the danger immediately and acted. In total, 5 people were shot, 4 victims, plus the suspect himself. All 5 wounds were to the lower body. According to Bettison, none of the injuries are considered life-threatening, and everyone is expected to survive. The victims range in age from their mid-20s to mid-30s. The suspect is now in custody. Investigators believe the fight may have stemmed from an existing dispute between those involved, though the full picture is still under investigation. One detail that stood out from the briefing: Greater Love Tabernacle Church is what Detroit police call a green light location, part of a citywide program that places real-time surveillance cameras at high-traffic sites specifically to help police respond faster when something goes wrong. It's a small piece of context, but it matters. This wasn't a random, unmonitored corner, and even then, violence still found its way in. The reaction from city leadership was swift. Detroit Mayor Mary Sheffield addressed the shooting directly, saying her thoughts were with the victims, their families, and the congregation, and expressing relief that everyone is expected to recover. She credited the police department's advanced intelligence work and the officers' quick decision-making with preventing far greater loss of life. A place of worship, she said, should be a place of safety, and on this day, the response of the officers on scene is what kept it from becoming something much worse. The Pi 3 funeral home also released a statement, expressing sorrow for everyone affected and noting that what should have been a moment of remembrance and healing was instead disrupted by senseless violence that rippled through the entire community. Chief Bettison closed his briefing with something that felt less like a policy statement and more like a plea. He asked residents who have any knowledge of potential violence, any warning signs, any threats, to reach out to their local precinct before things escalate. Because in this case, that early warning is exactly what put officers in position to stop a tragedy from becoming a massacre. So that's the news. A funeral already heavy with grief, interrupted by gunfire. Lives altered in seconds. A city left shaken. But here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. In the days that follow a moment like this, people don't just need facts. They need something to hold on to. And that's where the second part of this story comes in, because not far from that same neighborhood, a different kind of gathering was happening. Not with police tape and press conferences, but with open Bibles and a message about the very thing that tears communities apart in the first place: division. Every act of violence like this has a backstory. An argument, a grudge, a relationship that broke down long before a trigger was ever pulled. And if you zoom out far enough, That's really what a lot of our pain, personal, communal, even spiritual, comes down to: unresolved division. That's exactly the subject a local pastor addressed in a message centered on unity, one that, whether intentionally or not, speaks directly into moments like the one this community just lived through. The message opens with a simple but unsettling idea that division isn't just a bad habit or a personality clash. It's described as a spirit, something that actively works to keep people from praying together, working together, and healing together. Arguing, infighting, petty conflict. According to the message, these aren't just social problems, they're spiritual roadblocks. And when they take hold of a community, they don't just create tension, they cut off the very thing that community needs most in a crisis, unified prayer. To make that point land, the pastor tells a story, a parable about a small town with one bridge. It's an old wooden bridge, and over the years it starts to rot. Boards weaken, beams crack. Everyone in town can see it happening. But instead of coming together to fix it, the townspeople argue. Who should pay for the repairs? Whose responsibility is it? Old resentments resurface. Neighbors who used to work side by side start pointing fingers instead. And while they're busy arguing about whose fault the bridge is, nobody actually fixes it. Eventually, predictably, the bridge collapses. And here's the gut punch of the story: that bridge wasn't just a piece of wood and rope. It was the only thing physically connecting one half of the town to the other. When it fell, it didn't just cut off traffic, it cut off the community itself. Neighbors who used to see each other every day now had to travel miles out of their way just to reach people who used to live a 5-minute walk away. The message is blunt: stubbornness and division didn't just create an inconvenience. They severed a relationship that had existed for generations, and it happened because people cared more about being right than being connected. From there, the message turns to Scripture, specifically Psalm 133, which opens with the line about how good and pleasant it is when people dwell together in unity. The pastor's point is that this isn't just a nice sentiment, it's presented as a spiritual principle with real consequences. When believers are united, according to the message, that's when prayer becomes powerful. That's when breakthrough happens. And that's exactly why, the message argues, division gets targeted so aggressively. Conflict among people who are supposed to be on the same side isn't framed as an accident, it's described as a deliberate strategy to keep a community weak, distracted, and disconnected from the very thing that could protect and heal it. The message closes with a direct challenge to the audience. Put your feelings on the shelf. Set aside the grudges, the hurt feelings, the old arguments, not because they don't matter, but because there's something bigger at stake in this particular season. The call is to come together, in unity, and seek God collectively, because a divided house or a divided community can't stand strong against what it's facing. Here's why I wanted to bring you both of these stories together instead of telling them separately. A funeral was interrupted by an argument that turned violent. A pastor, days later, told a parable about a town that let an argument destroy the one thing holding it together. Those two stories are not unrelated. They're describing the same disease from two different angles, one from a police podium and one from a pulpit. Detroit Police Chief Bettison ended his briefing asking people to speak up before violence happens, to reach out, to communicate, to not let tension sit and fester until it explodes. That's not just law enforcement advice. That's the same warning as the bridge parable. Fix the cracks before the whole structure collapses and takes the entire community down with it. Mayor Sheffield called it what it was, a senseless act of violence in a place that's supposed to be safe. And the message on unity offers something that no press conference can, a reason why it keeps happening, and a path towards something different. No community heals through gunfire. And no community heals through silence either. It heals through people choosing, actively, repeatedly, even when it's hard, to stay connected instead of letting the bridge rot. If this story affected you the way it affected me while researching it, if you're tired of watching communities get torn apart by conflicts that could have been resolved before they escalated, I genuinely encourage you to sit with Psalm 133 for a minute today. Read it slowly. Ask yourself where in your own life a bridge might be quietly rotting while everyone argues about whose job it is to fix it. Thank you for watching. If this video meant something to you, drop a comment and let me know what stood out. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one, where we don't just report what happened, but sit with what it means. Until next time, stay safe, stay connected, and stay in unity.